The best music I've ever written has been, when I'm going through a divorce and my heart is completely crushed. I've written some of my best music when I've been an absolute mess. Technique to me is invisible. When you watch me play, you shouldn't see anything. You should feel everything.
I think a quote of yours is, if you want to play big shows, have a big sound.
Exactly. You want a big audience? Make a big sound. You can't separate who you are from your music.
Today's guest is Tommy Emmanuel, regarded by most people in the world as probably the greatest guitar player, definitely the best acoustic guitar player in the world, and he's our guest today, and I'm very, very excited to talk to him.
Tommy, just like I wrote it.
Thank you, Tommy, for coming. It's a huge privilege and pleasure.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Looking forward to kind of going through. I've got a ton of notes here because I'm a big fan, and maybe we can kind of think about maybe chronologically going through your life. But
okay.
But first and foremost, you're here to play a show tonight.
Yeah.
And that's at the dopeYEAH Club here in Prague.
Yeah.
You've been to Prague before?
Yeah, and I've been here before. It's an amazing place. The museum is, it's mind-blowing, really, For a kid like me from the bush, I see radios and I go, oh, I remember my neighbor had one like that. And, I can still remember driving in the car with my dad and turning on the radio and seeing the light start to glow and then the radio slowly come on because it was a valve radio. I still remember that. And I remember how good it sounded. And the speakers were like egg-shaped sitting on top of the dash,
Brilliant stuff.
No seatbelts.
It was funny, last night I was watching you walking through the museum, and obviously there's guitars lying around as well. And you couldn't pass a guitar by without picking it up and having a little conversation with it. Yeah. I found that very endearing. It kind of reminded me of, I remember years ago, Gary Moore? Do you remember an Irish guitar player called Gary Moore? So Gary Moore, I knew Gary as well, and he said to me once, he said, we were talking about guitar players, and, I was saying I'm not a great guitar player and blah, 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 but I sing. But I said, so he said, look, the thing is, Rob, if you can pass by a guitar without picking it up, it's probably not for you. And I thought that was a very,
Yeah, well, that does, but, there's also a thing with, people who are so fascinated by, oh, look at this guitar, it's from 1956 and a blah, 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 and a lot of times I've bought like a Mexican Fender Telecaster, right, made in 2018, and it was better than most of the old guitars worth $50,000. It was better.
Funny enough, my favourite guitar in my studio is a Mexican Tele.
Yeah, see?
I bought it in 1992 in New York. Like $300 something, $400 is great.
Yeah. It's, people always say, well, what's the greatest guitar? And it's the one that's right for you. It's the one that you can't put down. It doesn't matter if it's some funky old thing, it doesn't matter, I remember when I got into Jerry Reed, and he had this kind of funky, honky sound, and it turned out to be a Baldwin nylon string guitar, which was a cheap version of a Peavey, you know, and it was a cheapish kind of guitar, but that was his sound, you know.
Well, I thought it was like you were having like, it was endearing, like you had to give it a little bit of respect. It's a guitar, and I thought like even the ugly ones you liked.
Yeah, even the ugly ones are pretty.
Yeah, you were like, you had to have that little conversation with them as you were going by. And look, a bit of respect. I'll play you for a little bit.
Well, you know, I'm just fascinated by guitar. I've already played like probably 25 guitars today because I visited a guitar store here in Prague, and I played a lot of Czech made guitars, and they're so good. Welch.
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course.
Brilliantly made and kind of traditional style, but unusual woods and just really well made. So congratulations to the Czechs for that.
Well, they've got loads of amazing guitar player makers here, and microphone makers. I think there's a history of, you know, hugely brilliantly made equipment. That's the thing that Czechs do really well. The Poles do it really well as well. It's right. Eastern Europe, I think. They've always had that attention to detail.
They actually care.
Yeah, exactly. they actually give a shit.
Yeah.
But again, going back to the guitar, I was thinking about you this morning and from last night, and it's like you're nearly like a cyborg, like in the sense that your guitar is part of you. It's like an added limb or something that you use to kind of.
It's a familiar cradle.
Yeah,
isn't it? You know, that's how Chet Atkins described it. My guitar is a familiar cradle. You know, and I remember when he was old and sick and he had a stroke and all that stuff. I changed the strings on his main Country Gentleman, and I put some real thin strings on it, so because he was struggling with his hands, and then eventually his motor skills went away, and so he would just sit there and hold the guitar, and lean back, and we would talk and all that, but he just held it because it was his familiar cradle, you know.
And also, I think as a kind of device to communicate emotion, you know what I mean? So you can nearly like weaponize a guitar in lots of good ways. And even like I remember Woody Guthrie, and he had written on his guitar like, this machine kills fascists. You know, he knew the power of it and the power of music and the way you can transmit that emotion, you know, to other people.
Totally, yeah. I always say to the audience, you see this, and I point to my guitar, it's a weapon of mass construction.
I love that. It's absolutely true. And as I said yesterday, just that reverence, and then you played for everybody. You didn't have to. You just for the joy of playing.
Yeah.
And that again reminded me when I was, I've been a singer in a past life, and I remember when I was about 14 and I was getting a bit cocky, and I was in a band, and I was at my grandmother's birthday, and in Ireland they sing at the drop of a hat,
Yes, of course.
and then somebody said, Robert's in a band now, and then someone said, well, sing us a song, and I was like, nah, I don't want to sing. Well, you're a singer, aren't you? Then sing a song, okay,
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that from you last night. It was like, you're just born to do this, and it's kind of part of your DNA to pick up an instrument which you kind of instantly give respect to, not only people around you, but the instrument, and then you want to change the emotional space in the room in a really good, positive way. I think that's the power of it sometimes, when people don't realize you instantly change the emotional space. It's a wonderful thing to see, and it's
Well, guitar is such a universal instrument as well. It's you can take it anywhere. And you can play any kind of music on it, It's just a wooden box with wires on it, really. That's all it is. It's just, but it helps you communicate, and it helps people to understand you better as well, because you can't separate who you are from your music. That's why people say, I hear one note from B.B. King and I know it's him. Yeah, well, it's not just his sound, but it's him that you're listening to, really. It's him deep inside, And we can't separate who we are from our music.
I think you're right. I mean, for me, I was giving it a bit of thought this morning, just from yesterday after we had dinner last night. It is about resonating frequencies, though. And then I'll start to even think about like string theory and really getting deep in the sense of you're kind of resonating frequencies, and people are resonating with that frequency. Yeah. I mean, you could really get into the science of it. There's a science behind it that you know how to do it on some other level, how to create a frequency that resonates with other human beings.
Well, that's what you hope.
Yeah, what you strive for.
Yeah. The other thing on the other side of the fence here, Rob, is that I always tell young people who I'm trying to encourage, not everybody's going to like what you do, so don't take it personally. I know for a fact that there are people out there who can't stand my playing, and that's a shame, and I feel bad about that, but it's just their choice or their taste, and I'm not trying to please them. If you want to fail, then try and please everybody, because you will fail at that. I guarantee it, right? However, if you have something good to say that's going to make people's lives better, that's going to bring some positivity into the world, get out and say it. And it doesn't matter, when people say to me, I'm doing a serious interview for some magazine, they'll say, what do you think about your critics who say you're a bit entertaining or you're a bit, blah, blah, blah? I just say, they don't exist in my world. I don't care what people say. I don't care what critics say. Who the hell are they anyway? And besides, I never said I was the best at anything. What a ball and chain that would be if I had to walk around thinking that I was the best of blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I definitely give my best, and I do the best I can. Right? That's how I can use that word best. But I definitely don't think any more about what I do. I just get up there and do what I do. And if you like it, great. And I hope you have a great time, because I'm already having a good time, But I'm not here to try and impress you and win you over. Mm-hmm. I'm here to change the way you feel right now. And if you were thinking about, financial problems or whatever, emotional problems or whatever, that you forget about them for a while and your stress level comes down like that because you got distracted by what I was doing. That's my job, to make you feel better.
Yeah, that's
Does that make sense
It
to
makes
you?
perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even you go back to Stone Age Man, they banged sticks on rocks just to make a sound, to change the emotional space. Again, going to that, you want to take people out of themselves. You say with their, it's to give it another space. People sometimes use drugs for that. All kinds of things. Alcohol.
We all had to go with that.
Yeah, but music does it in the most positive.
Exactly.
In the most positive way.
I played at San Quentin and at. What's the other? There's another couple of big prisons in California, and I played at them. Folsom. I played in Folsom Prison as well, and there were like 50 inmates, and some of them were really old guys down the front with their walking sticks, and some real big guys at the back and all that. And anyway, we played. I had my friend Martin Taylor, who's a great swing, 40s, 50s swing era jazz player. And we played some really wonderful stuff and gave him a good time. And I'll never forget this big guy came up and gave me a hug, and he whispered in my ear, "We escaped for an hour."
Amazing.
Because we played, it transported them all, and that was the freedom and the beauty of music. They were prisoners there for the rest of their lives, but they escaped for an hour through music.
Amazing. So going back to the very beginning of your life, you started playing guitar when you were 4.
I did.
And your mum played pedal steel?
I played pedal steel later when I was in the teenage years.
But your mum did, didn't your mother play?
My mother, no, it wasn't pedal steel. My mum played Hawaiian steel, like lap steel.
Oh, okay, lap steel, sorry.
Yeah, she was learning, and she was trying to teach my older sister as well, and she ended up giving her guitar, and my sister became really good at it. And but we used to listen to traditional Hawaiian music in those days.
Wow.
But so basically, I started my musical life. First of all, my brother and I drove our mother and father crazy, asking for instruments and wanting to be putting records on all the time. And we would get down on the floor and put our ear right next to the speaker, listen to the music and take it in, And my brother had such an ear. He could hear a song and he'd go D, B minor, G, A7, that's E, and he would hear it. He'd know what it was, and he taught me to do that. Him and I invented this game where, because we were close brothers, we were always competitive and having fun. But I was the rhythm guy, and he was the lead guy. He was the lead guitar player. He didn't want to do anything else but play lead guitar. I was his accompanist, right? So we would turn our back to each other, and I would play a chord, and he would say, it's an F, and it's got an A, and a E flat, and he would name the notes. Right? Wow. Yeah. And then he would play a chord and I would have to do the same thing. That's how we learned about music and to recognize what the chords are in a song, And that's how I still play everything by ear. I've never had a music lesson in my life. I play everything by ear, and I beg, stole, and borrowed as much as I possibly can, and I continue to do that.
Let the rain drive right on. Let the waves sweep along. I got them deep river blues. My old gal, she's a good old pal, but she looks like a waterfowl. I get them deep river blues. And there ain't no one to cry for me. The fish all go out on a spree, yeah, when I get them deep river blues.
going back to your mum and your dad, so what were they listening to in the house when you were a small child? I know you mentioned Hawaiian music, but traditional Hawaiian music, but outside of that?
Oh, country music, yeah. I think the first music I can ever recall was Hank Williams and Jimmy Rogers. They were the first two people I remember hearing. And then some kind of Australian country bush ballad people. And then when I was about, well, we were listening to rock and roll music as well, but we were also listening to Marty Robbins, Skeeter Davis, Hank Lachlan, Hank Snow, Elvis Presley, Ricky Nelson. You're talking about the beginnings of rock and roll. That was, this is the late 50s, early 60s. But our biggest influence by far was the Shadows.
Wow.
Yeah, Hank Marvin and Bruce Welch. Bruce Welch was the original rhythm guitar player for the Shadows. He was my first big hero. And he's still one of my heroes,
Of course.
And Hank Marvin, of course, my brother idolized him until the day that he passed away. But this is one of the things, it's good talking about this because it reminds me that every day I'm grateful to be born when I was born and where I was born, and the fact that I've lived long enough to meet just about all my heroes. Chet Atkins, Merle Travis, Jerry Reed, Les Paul, Duane Eddy, Hank Marvin, Bruce Welch, all
Rob
those.
Cass.
Yeah, exactly. And Eric Clapton and, people like that, James Burton, Albert Lee, all the greats. I have been blessed with meeting them and getting to know them,
So your mum and your dad, just going back to that again, because I'm fascinated by them. So were they first generation Aussies or second generation? Where did their families originally come from?
Well, they were both Aussies, as I am, but we traced our family tree. I come from a long line of thieves. Yeah. So the guy and the girl who started this mess called my family tree, one was sent to Australia for stealing bread, and the other one was sent to Australia for stealing money.
Because it was a penal colony.
It was a penal colony
back in the day.
Back in the late 1770s. Australia was virtually settled by the English in 1778. My daughter Amanda was born in 1988, so she's a bicentennial baby. She has a special birth certificate which says 200 years Australia, But the family came from England and Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, doing my research, so the whole story of when you were 6, your dad bought 2 station wagons, sold the family home, and you guys traveled around Australia?
We did. Yeah, we got out there and took the family on the road. How that happened was we had won a talent quest, right? And first prize was a chance to play on a TV show called 6 O'Clock Rock. It was like Bandstand, that kind of thing. And there happened to be an American TV producer who was in Australia visiting and was kind of consulting, because TV was new in 1961. It was brand new, So we played live and the audience lit up and loved it. I was 6 years old, I'm little, and I'm moving around and, and everyone was going crazy. Anyway, this TV producer came up to my dad and said, "These kids have talent. The world needs to see them. You better, are you going to get them out on the road?" And that's all it took, was that guy saying that to my dad. When we drove back home and my mum and dad went in and had a powwow. Wow. And when they came back out, they said, "Okay, we're going to buy some new gear. We're going to get some good amps and good guitars, and we're going to go on the road."
But that's massive. It's a massive thing. I mean, looking back from your parents' point of view, they must have really believed in you. But also, how did you feel about it at the time? I mean, it's difficult to remember when you were 6, but you just went with the flow, or was it an adventure?
The adventure of playing in a band, especially with my brothers and my sister. You know, and my dad was a taskmaster. You know, it's like, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it properly. So there was practice, there was rehearsals, and all that stuff, and you know, no mistakes. You know, all that sort of stuff. And if we're on stage, if we took our eyes off the audience or just, you know, clowned around too much or whatever, my dad would look over and he'd go like that. You know, like, you're here for the audience. You know,
bit of the James Brown character. Don't make any mistakes.
No. If you make a mistake, you better leave by the other side of the stage. You know.
And he died when you were about 11, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
And that must have been tough.
It was hard, and I tried so hard to be close to him, I think I have 2 photographs that I treasure of me sitting close to my dad. Because I can remember, my mum said when he came back from the war that he was never the same. And which he probably had some kind of PTSD, but we didn't know what it was. And so he was a bit erratic, and he'd have bad dreams and want to jump out the window and stuff like that. But I remember when my dad allowed himself to be gentle and kind, that I would be like a magnet, you know, trying to get close to him. And in both the photos that I love, I'm sitting almost right on him, you know, because I wanted his love, you know.
It was a different time, though, wasn't it, in the sense that I had it with my own father, I'd say, he and I never really got along. And
That's a shame.
yeah, it was a shame. And it's interesting, though, and you know, it's terrible to say, but I just don't think he liked me, which is a difficult thing to come to terms with.
It's impossible to understand, isn't it?
It is for me. And but you know, I have this old. I've got very little of my dad's stuff, but I have this old tracksuit top, and you know, even though my relation with my father was challenging, to say the least, I wouldn't part with that top for all the tea in China. You know what I mean? It's kind of strange that you know, it's still there, even though I didn't feel he had much time for me, I still wanted him to like me. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, when I became dad, when I had my first daughter, I had a feeling like I've got to let go of all because I'm trying to cling on to my dad's memory, you know what I mean? So when my daughter was born and the nurse took her off me and was washing and all that, I went outside the hospital and I went out to the car park, and I just I held my hands up like that, and I just said, I release you. I let go of you because I'm dad now.
Right.
And I'm going to try and do a better job than you, you know? And I kind of imagined that all my memories of him were just going up in the air like that. And every single time I talk with my children, I tell them how much I love them. And I know it just goes by like, you know, I say it every time, but it's what they're going to remember. You know what I mean?
No, it's huge.
Yeah.
I'm the same with, even, you know, we weren't a very huggy family. I'm a hugger, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to break the chain, you know, that
exactly.
I don't want to, it's horrible, because even though my father had no time for me, I still don't want to speak badly of him, really. But
of course not.
But at the same time, I don't want to be like him, which is kind of awful to say. But
I can relate completely, Rob, because, you know, there are things about the way my dad lived that when I grew up, and my mum and dad, that I disagree with, or that I don't align myself to. Mm-hmm. But I don't say, well, you know, I want nothing to do with you. You wouldn't need. They did the best they could with what they had. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I haven't been a perfect husband or a perfect dad either, but I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. So I have no right to judge my parents and to hold that against them.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's to do, without getting too into being a psychology, being a psychologist sitting here in the chair here, but it's to do with trauma. I think there's a lot of, even with parents and their trauma growing up, you don't know their experience of what happened to them.
Exactly.
But it is about trying to, I think even with music, bringing that back into the equation, that's the tool the wondrous tool you have that can make such a huge emotional difference. Because I think there's a kind of purity in music. I mean, the analogy I would give at music is pets. Like, I love my cat, and my cat loves me, and I've had dogs, and they've loved me, and I love that kind of purity with a creature or with a guitar. You know, when you're in the zone, in the moment, you are communicating a pure emotion. When you're in the right space, and that's a treasure, for people. And I think that's why music is so, loved, is because people need it in their lives. Can you imagine a world without music?
Thank God for that. Otherwise, I'd be out of a job. And a man needs a good job.
I was funny. I was also reading up about Chet Atkins, who was obviously one of your first heroes, wasn't he?
He was another daddy to me as well.
Amazing. I just read the story about there was a story about when he was playing early with his brother as well. He played with his brother, and his brother wanted him to play violin, and he did for a while. But then he always wanted to go back to the guitar, so he went at I think it was 11. He went and traded a pistol for a guitar. Yeah, only in America.
Exactly. Yeah, there are more guns. I support this organization called Guitars Over Guns. Right? It's a real thing. And they try to get catch young people in some of these cities like Pittsburgh and Washington and places like that, New York, where there's so much gang mentality and all that, and get them playing music and all things. So it's called Guitars Over Guns, and it's one of the many different things that I try to support.
I think it's about mentoring, isn't it? You're mentoring people, and because you can make a difference. The right conversation at the right time can change everything.
Totally.
I really believe that, and I was lucky as well when I was growing up to meet people who I felt cared about me. I was an apprentice electrician when I was a kid, and I was always in bands from honest.
So you're a bright spark.
Yeah. But so I used to, and before that, I grew up working class, very hardcore working class Dublin. But I remember when I went to the depot as an apprentice, and they would line you up, and different electricians would take you out, and to work with them for the day.
Oh, okay.
And I remember this one particular guy. He took me out, and he was like, I like him. And I remember getting in the car with him. He looked a really good looking dude. He looked like Clint Eastwood. And so he said, "Are you into music?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in a band. We're going to be big." And it's like, and he said, "Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to my house and we'll have a cup of tea," because it was near where we were working. And went to his house. His wife lets us in, and we're kind of. He said to me, "Oh, just go in there and wait. I'll put the kettle on." And he ushers me into this room, and from the floor to the ceiling was vinyl the whole way around the whole room. And I was just like, "Oh my God!" I was the eldest. I'd never seen anything like this, and all I listened to up to that point was Irish traditional music. I was a strange kid, like one of the
diddly-eye.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All I listened to. I didn't listen to popular music. I was very odd. And then he came in, and then it was one of those jobs that wasn't very tough, you know. So I was working with this guy then for about a year and a half, and every morning I couldn't wait to get to work because we'd go to his house and he would play all these records for me. This is before the internet. You know, feast your ears on this record, and he had everything from classical to rock, to punk, to country.
Wow.
And he had a huge influence on me. Like, he was like my big brother, and I still remember today, and I'd love to, you know, go back and thank him for like all that wonderful information he gave me, because he just loved sharing it with me, and I loved hearing it, you know.
Yeah.
So going back to Chet, so he became like your mentor, would you say? Is that fair to say?
Totally, yeah. Well, I wrote him a fan letter. When my dad passed away, I kind of retreated into my own world of listening to Chet Atkins records. It did something to me. It helped me get through that period. And I decided to write a fan letter. So I wrote this letter saying, "Dear Mr. Atkins, my name's Tommy and I'm an Australian. I've got some of your albums and I'm trying to play some of your tunes, and thank you for your beautiful music and all that." And I asked him for a photo and all that. Right? So then I put the letter in an envelope, and on the envelope I wrote, "Chet Atkins, Nashville, America." Right? Put some stamps on it and sent it. He got it. Right?
That's fabulous.
Because there were no zip codes in those days, no postcode. And anyway, about 3 months later, I come home from school and my mum says, "Put your bag down and go into your room. There's something on your bed." And I went in there and there was this big brown envelope with, you know, eagles on the stamp. And I was like, "What's this?" You know, and I opened it. It was from Chet. It was a beautiful letter with RCA Victor heading and everything in it, and it was typed, and then he signed it at the bottom. And then there was this black and white photo to me, you know. And I can't tell you what that did for me, that my hero sent me a letter and a photo. I couldn't believe it. And Chet was like the busiest guy. He was producing Dolly Parton, Charlie Pride, Perry Como, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Marty Robbins. I mean, he just had so many people. Hank Snow. He had so many people he was working with and all that. And he took time to write to some little kid in Australia.
He must have saw something in your letter that resonated with him.
Well, you know, what happened was years later, people recorded me playing in their lounge room. I'd visit people and they'd always want me to play. So I'd play. And somebody sent him tapes of me playing. And when I was about 18, I get this letter. And it's from the desk of Chet Atkins and it's handwritten. And it says, "Dear Tommy, I've been listening to your tapes and I played them for," you know, he rattled off a few names of people he'd played my tapes to, "and we are impressed. When are you coming to Nashville? Blah, blah, blah. Here's my number." And he gave me his number. And so it wasn't until years later, because I had no money. I had no passport in those days, but it wasn't until I was like 25, I think I was, when I made my first trip to Nashville. And so I've got his office number, and my first night in Nashville, I can't sleep because I'm in his town, and I stay up all night playing guitar. Sun comes up, joggers go by, and squirrels go up and down the tree, and I'm waiting for 10 a.m. because I know that's his office from 10 till 5. And right on 10 o'clock, I call, and he answers the phone. I said, "I'm looking for Mr. Atkins." He said, "This is he." And I said, "It's Tommy Emmanuel from Australia," thinking he won't have a clue who it is. And he says, "Hey, Tommy, where are you?" With that East Tennessee accent. And I said, "I'm just down the road at the Holiday Inn." "Well, come on down, I'll see you." So I get in the car with my guitar and my little book of photos and, you know, memorabilia. And I go down there and I'm waiting downstairs with his secretary, Caroline, who's sitting there. I'm waiting down there, and all of a sudden, all my fears come to grip me. And I suddenly realize, oh my God, I'm about to meet my hero, but he'll want me to play for him. And I start thinking, what if I'm just a really bad version of him? What if he hates what I do? And this is all going on in my head, right? So I start to, get the fear building in me. And then he comes down the stairs and he looked exactly like he did on his records. And there he was. And he came up to me and, I was breathless, and he put his arm around me. He knew exactly what I was going through. And he says real quietly, "You want to pick a little?" I said, "You want to pick a?" I said, "Sure," So he takes me into this room, play something. So I go into Me and Bobby McGee, right? Mm-hmm. I start playing Me and Bobby McGee, and he watches for a while. And then he joins in. And when he joined in, he was playing like harmony things and little things around what I was doing. And I just played the melody, which I'd ripped off from him anyway, played it. And he made me sound so good what he was doing. It was so beautiful. And we finished the song and, he said, "I like the way you did that and that." And I said, "You mean this?" And he said, "Yeah, I didn't do that." He recognized that I was putting my own things in there. Even though I'd learned that song from his version, I was doing my stuff with it. And he was like, I didn't do that. I didn't do that, And then we went into another song and he just jumped all over it and kind of showed me a bit of what he could do. And holy moly, it was like, wow, And then he took me upstairs and there was a guy up there named Lenny Bro, mm-hmm. who was a genius. And Lenny, I could hear Lenny playing and I knew exactly who it was. So the three of us sat there around a table playing for like 4 hours. Wow. We hardly took a breath. It was just incredible.
Magical.
And the funny thing was, there was a cassette player sitting there on the table and no one thought to record anything. And I'm the only one left alive. So I can remember that because it's in here.
Well, he obviously had an empathy with you because he kind of had a tough upbringing as well.
Yeah. We had a real bond about our relationship with our fathers because his father never showed him the kind of respect and love that he should have, even when he was really successful, because his father equated being a musician with being a sight reader who could play classical music. That was what he called a good musician, and because Chet was country, and played pop music, his father didn't really give him the respect he deserved.
It's often the case, isn't it?
Yeah, and all he wanted was to be close to his dad, the same as I did,
Same as myself, and I think it's but the irony of it all is, and I've said this before in previous interviews, is that kind of great art comes out of struggle. So I think that's at least the upside of it, because, if your life is wonderful and just nice all the time, where are you going to get the inspiration from?
Exactly. The best music I've ever written has been, when I'm going through a divorce and my heart is completely crushed. I've written some of my best music when I've been an absolute mess.
Because obviously when your dad died, so you're 11, that's really tough. And if Australia was anything like Ireland, like you have to pick up the slack as the young boys, so you probably had to have double jobs.
My two brothers were the breadwinners.
Yeah.
There were 6 children and mum, and we worked our butts off, but my mum was a tireless worker too, as I'm sure yours was, and that's just how that generation was.
And is your mum, so during that whole period, was she very supportive about what you were doing musically?
Oh, absolutely. My mother loved what I did, and
she must have been very proud in the end.
Well, what the funny thing is, though, I remember when I had a great period, one of those purple patches where I had like 4 albums in a row. I won, Male Artist of the Year. My album won Adult Contemporary Album of the Year, and I had gold records and platinum records. And I was building this whole thing, I remember we were backstage, and there was a whole bunch of journalists there, and I was doing interviews and stuff. And this guy said to my mum, "Wow, you must be so proud of your son," like that. And she just said, "I'm proud of all my children." End of story,
So Aussie that,
isn't it? I'm proud of all my children.
Yeah. I'm not singling anyone out here.
That's her saying to me, "Don't you think that you're better than the others?" You know what I mean? You're all the same.
But that's what I've always liked about Aussies, though, the humility and the humbleness, And, as I said, I know Jimmy Barnes, as you know Jimmy as well, and Jane, his wife,
great.
And Diesel. So, and you've worked with those guys as well over the years.
Those guys are great. They really are. Yeah. The Aussie spirit is, like we never get caught up in the rock star life. I don't know any Aussies who are like that.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you worked with John Farnham as well, didn't you? Didn't you do a lot of stuff with John Farnham?
John Farnham?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was his musical director in the late 70s. There is no better singer on earth.
The voice.
Better than John. To me, he's the ultimate singer.
Yeah, I used to try and always get that note on his big hit, where he...
Oh, he's unbelievable.
So how was that, an exciting period?
Oh, it was great. It was a great learning period, and getting to work with other musicians who were so good. And it was a great period.
How did that come about? How did you meet
because
them?
I was the gun for hire in Australia in those days, and I could play on your record no matter what it was. And I would come in and if you had a chart and you wanted me to do certain things, I could go in there. I couldn't read it, but you play a bit of it on piano for me, I'll recognize it, I'll get it, I've always been a songs person, and I always try to serve the music right,
Serve the song.
So, but I knew how important it was to be, focused and get it in 1 or 2 takes, and that's it,
I think the focus is important. I've often mentioned this before as well. Listening to Chet Atkins, I could hear the focus in his playing.
And
then listening to Chet Atkins this morning when I knew I was going to be talking to you, so I thought I'd listen to some of his music and as well to try and listen to your influences to kind of get more of a picture. And then I could hear you in the playing, the accuracy, because it's like not only, I think, and I don't want to be sounding like I'm blowing smoke here, but what I love about your playing is the way you're technically incredible, but also you're emotionally totally on point.
Yeah.
So a lot of great technical players to me leave me a little cold.
Exactly.
But you got that right. And then I could hear it in him technically at the time. He was very proficient, fabulously proficient, but he also had the emotional intent, which is the big difference for me.
Yeah. Well, technique to me is invisible. Mm-hmm. When you watch me play, you shouldn't see anything. You should feel everything, right? If you're seeing a lot, then I'm not doing it right. I remember when we first saw Chet Atkins play on a TV thing, my mother was sitting beside me, and she goes, "He doesn't look like he's doing much." And I said, "I know exactly what he's doing, and boy, is that hard." But he made it look easy because that's what we do. We practice so we don't have to. You don't want to watch someone struggling with their instrument, do you?
Of course, yeah.
No. You want to just close your eyes and trust that person up there, that they're going to do everything, And so, I don't play stuff on stage that I haven't really made sure that every bit of it is right, and then I can pour everything into it. As much as I do that, as much as I leave space for total improvisation, and I'll go way off the track in the first half hour of the show, I'll be coming at you like this. You know what I mean?
Well, what I love about your live shows as well is the way you know, you create like a symphony in the sense of the way you're using reverbs and amp placement and the way you're using your DI signal mixed with your amp signal, trying to create this big sound.
Bigger frequencies.
Yeah, that just resonates again, back to that again, where it kind of covers a lot more ground in the sense of how you fill out the sound.
Well, I want the people to feel that their head is inside my guitar. You know what I mean? It's like it's all around you. And that's what I like. And then it's not just a matter of performance, but it's also choice of material, you know, and how much adventure you can build into that. Because I know when I need to start grabbing people and going slap, 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 you know what I mean? I'm playing this tune and I'm taking a lot of risk with it and I'm getting down and dirty with it, you know? That's me slapping you about, watch this, and they're like, wow, holy shit, did you see that? Blah, 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 blah. And then in the next minute I play something that you go and close your eyes and listen, you know? It's entertainment. That's what it's about. It's all about entertainment. And to me, entertainment equals surprise me.
Also, I think a quote of yours is, if you want to play big shows, have a big sound.
Exactly. You want a big audience? Make a big sound.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I agree with that. It's exciting, you know, again, changing the emotional space, trying to get people out of themselves, trying to get that elevated feeling, you know, that...
Yeah. Well, a part of that was born out of being young, and not being heard because people were talking over you and not paying attention. So, okay, I'll get a bigger PA, I play as loud as Cold Chisel, you know what I mean?
Jimmy's band?
I play as loud as hell. You talk over that, mother truckers, you know what I mean? So, you know, I try to keep it at a good level now. I've got a great sound man who really knows what's right, and I can trust him, you know. But there are times like last weekend I played outdoors in Key West, and I was on before Little Feat, and it was an outdoor event, so everyone was in a party mood, you know. So I got out there and I'm playing, and I just reached to the master volume and just cranked it so I couldn't go near the monitors because they were so loud, but I stepped right to the front of the stage where the people were, and I could hear the PA just going bang like that. And that's what it took for me to be satisfied with what I was doing, I made it big. You know?
They're fun. I will say the club tonight, dopeYEAH, the guys are fantastic. Martin will be taking care of. Martin is an amazing sound man. They really love that, the whole getting it right for you.
Oh,
you know,
that's just a little room. I could play that with just my amp, but you know, I'm going to rock the house tonight.
Oh, it's going to be amazing! Yeah. I can't wait. So, you when did you move to Nashville? When did that move
20
happen?
years ago. Yeah. So here, in the line of things, I moved from Sydney to Melbourne, and I lived in Melbourne from 1990 to 98.
Okay.
And in that time, I had so many different projects. I was producing other records as well as doing my own albums and touring all the time. And then my wife she was from Denmark, and she wanted to come back to Europe, and but she didn't want to go back to Denmark. So we decided to move to England, and I sold my house, and I virtually started my career and my life all over again in a country where nobody knew me. I moved to England, and it was great. It was peaceful, it was quiet, it was not breakneck speed of everything. I got a million things going, and it was really, really wonderful. And my European career, so to speak, started then. You know, even though prior to that I'd been in France a few times with some guitar festivals and things. But anyway, what I did is I did some shows, and Martin Taylor, the English guitar player, was working with Bill Wyman and the Rhythm Kings, and Bill was doing an album, and he wanted to do a couple of Les Paul songs and Merle Travis songs. And Martin Taylor, bless him, showed Bill a video of me playing a Merle Travis tune. And Bill was like, that's the guy, you know. So I'm in this little apartment in London, and the phone rings, and this voice says, hello, it's Bill Wyman here. You know, that real typical slow, typical English accent. Bill Wyman, can you come in and play like Merle Travis? I said, hell yeah. And he said, all right, Snake Ranch Studios, 10 a.m., Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. And so I come in the next day to Chelsea, and we did Too Much Sugar for a Dime, which is an old 40s Travis tune. And I did the whole thumb picking thing and played, kind of quoted some Travis things. And Bill was like, he was ecstatic.
In heaven.
And then he said, can you play a little bit like Les Paul? I said, of course I can. And he said, well, I want to do Bye Bye Blues. Okay, yeah. So I played some Les type things, and he loved that. And then I ended up doing the whole album, playing rhythm on some things, and playing some electric guitar on some acoustic. And cut a long story short, that album is called Double Bill. It's a double album, beautiful album. And the band were going on tour, and he had Albert Lee and Martin Taylor as the guitar players. Right. He doesn't need another guitar player. He's got those two guys, you know. So I ring Bill, and I said, Bill, I want to be the opening act for the Rhythm Kings tour, you know. And he said, oh, I can't pay you much money. And I said, I don't care. I'm the guy for the... So I talked him into having me as the opening act. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because, first of all, the Rhythm Kings had such a following of music lovers,
sure,
as you can imagine. And it was a great band, and it was a beautiful tour, well put together. And what I did is I came out there as a total unknown, and I hosed the crap out of people for 25 minutes. They lost their minds. I came out to the foyer. I signed autographs. The first night, I sold 386 CDs.
Wow.
In intermission.
Fantastic.
Unheard of, right? So after about the second or third show, I got told by the tour manager that I wasn't allowed to put my CDs up for sale until the band walked on stage, right? Because all the figures had come through and the band had sold this much and I had sold that much, you know what I mean?
Fantastic.
And anyway, but the reason I'm telling this story is because here's what I did. I got my agent, I found an agent in Newcastle, and I got him to book me back in all the towns where I'd just been with the Rhythm Kings, like 2 months later, and I sold the gigs out. Yeah, because people remembered me, and I spent, I can't remember, 2,000 or 3,000 quid as pounds, and I did a full-page ad in a English guitar magazine, which most people don't do. Even record companies wouldn't do that. I did it, and it worked, and away I went, you know, and then I quickly moved from this little folk club to the theatre, to the bigger theatre within a few years, you know.
A bit of Australian hustle.
Well, you just got to be smart, and you got to...
Grab the opportunities.
You grab the opportunities, but you also, when you're out there, you better be delivering, you know. So that's how I've always worked. I've always said to people, you know, like my American management, when I first worked with them, it's like, you know, you got to get me on Merlefest, you know, you got to get me on Telluride, you got to get me all these big festivals in America. And my thing to them was, you get me out there, and I'll deliver. That's it. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And that's what happened. But sometimes you need better connected people to help you get to where you need to go. It doesn't mean there's something not right with your show. It just means you haven't got the right people yet.
I always said to people, like, the three most important things in the music business, like relationships, relationships, and relationships.
Exactly. You're right.
But but obviously your whole life has been, dare I say, a wandering minstrel. You know, you've done a huge amount of touring, and that must be tough, because I mean I've been a touring musician myself, and even when I was younger, it's very challenging, especially with family and missing family, and that.
Yeah.
So and you're still doing it, but that's something you must have to be mindful of, you know, with the family.
No. The thing is, everything comes at a price in life. If you don't know that, then you're in trouble, right? Everything that's really worth pursuing is going to cost you something, right? So I'm a dad, but I don't get to see any of my children as often as I want, right? Because I'm a touring musician. That's what I do. I always have been, and I always will be. And that's just the way God made me, you know, and I know that. And I had to call a family meeting, you know, 20 years ago, before my third daughter was born. I have two daughters, one from 88, one from 99, and I got divorced from their mother, and we're all still close. But I had to sit down with that unit and say, I will come and be with you as often as I can, but I have to go and do this. This is what I do. And everyone is going to have to be okay about it, like that. And I just laid it out like that. And you know what? They were okay about it, and they still are okay about it. You know what I mean?
Well, you've given them a wonderful, because, you know, you have to work in this life. I mean, I'm not being old-fashioned here, but for me as a man, you have to work. You know, and that, you know, I'd like to think that, you know, I've got stepkids that they see that in me. You know, you've got to put the day, you know, a day's work in. Yeah. You know, and it's a good influence. You know, it doesn't come easy. There are sacrifices, as you said.
The bottom line is, you know, we want the best for our kids, right? So at that time, their mother wanted to be in England, and we had a big house and a big mortgage. She wanted the kids to go to good schools, as I did. That costs a lot of money. So I have to work a lot harder than you could imagine to afford to house and educate my family in England while I'm working in Spain and Italy and Germany and all that stuff, you know what I mean? I had to work real hard in the old days to afford the lifestyle that my family needed, you know. So that's the reality of it, you know.
But you've never, I see you play, and you've never lost you've never got jaded.
No.
in emotionally by all. I've seen it happen, and I'm not going to mention names. As a producer, I've worked with some very big names.
I have too, and I feel sad for them.
And I see them just going through the motions, and I never see you going through the motions.
I would rather shoot myself than go through the emotions, you know, because it's all about what we're doing right now. You know, it's about what we're doing this moment. You know, everything we've done in our lives has got us to here. Mm-hmm. You know, let's give it hell.
Yeah, and live the moment. It's like I've known you've discussed this before yourself, but you know, the stupidity of people sitting in venues with phones filming stuff. It's just madness. It's like you've got to live the moment and and then remember the moment. Most people never even look at those things again anyway, but they've lost the moment. They haven't been in the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and some of my biggest regrets are the times that I went off at people like that, because I should mind my own business. But my emotions were so high at that time. I said, why don't you put that thing down and you know, enjoy this moment. Stick that thing away. And I've embarrassed them in front of all their friends, you know. And I did regret it, to be honest. I regretted it later. And I thought, damn, why did I get mad and all that sort of stuff.
But maybe it's sometimes people need to be shook up a little.
It's passion.
Yeah.
You know, you and I are passionate about what we do, and we're passionate about us doing the best we can. God help anyone who gets in the way of us delivering what we know we can for all those people. You know what I mean?
Well, you're driven. And I remember even a friend of mine, which is a kind of a thing with your background. I mean, I think we've got, dare I say, similar backgrounds, tough backgrounds, because when my father was having lots of drink issues, I was the eldest boy, and I had to step up and had different jobs, and I had to look after my brothers and sisters. And, you know, but I remember talking to a friend of mine who worked in the city in London, very wealthy, and he's got these kids, and he worries about his kids because he said, the thing, he said, I don't sound like I'm bragging, but he said, the thing I like about you most and the reason you've done okay in your life is you're driven, drive. And it's a huge thing you've got to have. And it's a gift as well. But a lot of kids don't have it. And it's because they get spoiled or their life is too nice where they don't have to drive. And you get robbed of something when you don't have the drive. So it's this irony of when you've had a tough background, the upside, the reward for that is the fact that you're driven and you love every moment.
But you're full of gratitude because you have that, and this is what's missing. I remember when my daughter, who's now 25, when she was about 14, 15, all that, it was all computer games, and she'd just disappear for like a day. She'd be in her room playing some stupid game, and I'm like, come on, I'm going to take you to this park, and we're going to go here, and we're going to do that. And he said, no, she's playing this game. I'm so into this game, and I've got people. I'm playing this person in Japan, and blah blah blah. I'm like, she's doing nothing but that, But I digress. It's none of my business.
Well, I think it is worth talking about in the sense that how it's massively affected young people in the sense that, because people are people, but I think it's tougher for young people now, the amount of distraction, because I think the beauty of, say, when you and I were growing up is the purity of being in the moment with very little distraction. There wasn't phones distracting where you hadn't, you brought a record in and you listened to it properly on your own. Yeah. It's not played, it's not jumping around. The attention span is there. I remember even my own stepkids, like they could never watch a movie from the start to the finish. They would watch it in sections like little episodes because they couldn't concentrate for 2.5 hours watching a movie. They would just watch it in sections. It was like, it's very bizarre. So they're constantly being distracted, and no different than you or I were when we were younger. But I think it is affecting them in the sense that I've got lots of young friends and young musicians I work with. They don't like to talk on the phone. They send you text messages all the time. So they've lost the ability to have a proper conversation on the phone. Like they're available, but they'd rather send you even voicemail. They don't want to actually interact with you directly. And that's just technology where it's getting out of hand a little bit for me, where it's actually affecting young people. And again, as I've said, if you want to be brilliant at an instrument, getting back to say you're wonderful playing, I think the one thing I've noticed about you when I've watched you play and I listen to your music is the focus. And I think that's the prime word, focus. And it's very difficult for young people now, to be able to have the calmness to focus. Right. Yeah. And I don't think you can be really amazing at anything if you don't properly focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It just reminded me what you were talking about of radio station 5 ADD, where we play the first verse of all your favorite songs.
I'll get out of town. Funny enough, I was reading about, because again, when I'm doing my research, going to be speaking to you today, I was reading about Chet Atkins, and he used to sort of go off piste at all these radio stations with the musical arrangements and all the he used to get fired all the time from these different radios because he would just go off piste and do a different kind. They didn't think it was the right thing for them.
Or they'd say to him, "We want you to play like Les Paul," and he'd say, "Well, to hell with you. I'm Chet Atkins," and they'd say, "Yeah, and you're out."
So you think that was the rebel in him as well, that you were attracted to it as well? He had that rebellious side and this kind of...
No, well, he's such a Southern gentleman, but I related to him as a person as well as a musician because he was like so focused. He was like a laser beam, when you watch him play something, and there it is. It's so incredible, and it takes work. I remember when I was living at the house with Chet and his wife Leona, we would come back and he would grab a guitar and sit on the couch and he would play until he fell asleep, and then he'd wake up and play a bit more. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So is there anyone today that you have the same kind of admiration for?
Oh my God, so many of them.
I know it's a difficult question, but if you had to name 2 or 3, who?
Well, Julian Lage, for a start, and John Mayer. What a writer, what a player, what a singer. Ed Sheeran, I love his songs, his playing. Well, there's just way too many great players out there. The world is full of them, and I'm grateful that, you know, I mean, I look at a, what do you call it? One of those codes that you do with a barcode.
Barcode.
I look at a barcode and I say, see this? This is the music. These are all the players in the music business. I've got that little line there. That's me, one little line. But thank you, God, I've got that little line. Yeah, there are just, you know, there are so many great players out there that.
Yeah. But your friend of mine was playing with John Mayer, Robbie McIntosh.
Yeah, Robbie, yeah.
And he's a fabulous guitar player
He
as
is.
well. And
Yeah.
he was here about 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
so that was
sorry,
wonderful.
I missed him.
Yeah, he's around. He's a fantastic player. And we had Hamish here as well, Hamish Stewart and Blair Cunningham, like McCartney's old band from the 90s.
Yeah, Wings.
Yeah, well, it was Paul on his solo thing outside of Wings.
Okay, right.
It was in like the 90 to 2000. But they were with him for 8 years, I think, you know. But he played with John and he loved it as well. And I loved, they did a version of Gravity, which was just
I love that song. It's working against me. I love that. Gravity. Yeah.
Beautiful melody and all the rest of it. So if you were to put your dream band together, like now with past and present players, if you had the ultimate band, who would be in it?
Oh, that's a hard one. Well, you know.
Drummer, who would be your drummer? If you could have any choice, time is no issue here. We're in a time machine, we can go back and get them. Who would it be?
Oh. Well, some of the best timekeepers I know, Vinny, Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl. There's so many great drummers out there that inspire me.
Because you're a drummer as well, aren't you? You played drums with your brother, didn't you? For your brother's band.
I've been a drummer all my life. I'm a drummer and a bass player and a guitar player. I had to go at other instruments like mandolin and fiddle and banjo and pedal steel, and I was awful at them.
Bass players. Who would be your favourite bass player to have in your band?
Probably Lee Sklar.
Well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. Victor Wooten actually played on a record of mine back in 2010. And there's so many people, I produce my own records, and so many people said to me, oh, you don't want to hire Victor Wooten, he's too busy, he plays too much. And I said, Victor Wooten is one of the greatest musicians on the planet, full stop. He'll play exactly what's right for the track. And they're like, really? And sure enough, we came in, we had drums, percussion, and me playing guitar, and Victor Wooten playing bass. And he nailed that part so beautifully, as I knew he would. And he was the one guy who, when we listened back, he said, I want to bring that down a little, it's a little too much and all that. I thought it was great. But when he chipped it away, it became perfect. You know what I mean? So he made it even simpler. But that's because he's a great musician, you know.
And keys players?
Well, I've always loved Ray Charles. You know, he's always... Billy Joel, you know, what a piano player. Stevie Wonder. I mean, they're all so great. Wow, there's just so many good ones.
And I was thinking probably your biggest show you've done was probably the Olympics. Would that be fair to say? That was huge.
The Olympics, that was 3.75 billion people watching.
That's a big audience.
And about 120,000 people in the stadium. And my brother and I were actually playing live. We had Line 6 pods.
I remember them well.
And in-ears. And Steve, who does my sound now, he did the live mix that the world heard. It was mixed by him. Wow. It was a backing track from the album that I'd produced from my brother and I had to get it down to 2 minutes and 36 seconds.
Of course.
Yeah, and make it all work. And we wanted to play live, so we did that, and that's how we
And that's a moment.
It was massive.
That's a moment, isn't it? You'll never forget
It was really great. Before the show and when everything was going on and all the athletes were out in the middle of the thing with their flags, the whole world is there in front of you, you know what I mean? And I said to my brother, we were looking out the window, and I said, take a photo of this with your mind, because this will never happen again. This moment, you know.
Tommy, been fantastic. Just last thing, could you play us something, please? Whatever you like. The other thing we could talk all day. The other thing we didn't talk about, which we're both fans of, is the Beatles. And because I'm a huge Beatles fan, and I worked at Abbey Road for a long time, which we've got to go and visit when you get to London.
2 hours.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just have a break for a second.
So I hope you enjoyed the Tommy Emmanuel podcast. An amazing guest. Come on. I mean, it's just an amazing life. Just such a maverick, such a different person. Self-taught, beginning from when he was a kid right until like professional from when he was 5 years of age. Just amazing story. And then we've got Michael Sterbe, the CEO, very charismatic CEO of GZ Media, one of the biggest vinyl manufacturers in the world. I think they can do 250,000 vinyls per day. So if you're interested in the whole vinyl world, from the very beginnings of it to the end of it, Michael talks us through all of that and the history of where the machines nearly got smashed up at one point when people fell out of love with vinyl. But now those machines are like precious things. Great conversation, amazing guy. But for more people who are interested in that side of the industry, I think you'll really enjoy the show. So always remember to like and subscribe, please. And any comments, we're open to them.
Ready?
Here we go. You ready?
Incredible, Tommy.
And the crowd went mild.
Tommy Emmanuel, that was amazing. Absolute joy.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much, man. That was absolutely brilliant. I'll send it to Paul.
Please do.
Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you, brother.
absolutely fantastic.
All righty. Oh, it's on there.